And these programs are untouchable too. DOJ, if somebody in the program, a higher up, commits poor deeds, whether this be improper use of contractors, whether this be funneling funds that are already illegal, whether this be bringing uncleared persons to site, they cannot be prosecuted.
Yeah. That's a problem.
Untouchable. And they, I'm a huge proponent in deep underground military bases. A lot of these times, these people don't even operate on the same elevation as their traditional military counterparts. I mean, if you got a dumb under Edwards and there's craft being stored down there, these guys from the 412th Test Wing operating on the craft under Edwards are not with their compatriots in the 412th Test Wing in the random air-conditioned buildings on the surface. Same with Dugway. The guys at the West Desert Test Center, the Indusec industrial security personnel, they might only pop up to go test a craft in the Avery area that has an internal rail system possibly back down. It's crazy. And so many corporations throughout history that we would expect, Lockheed Martin, TRW, the Rand Corporation, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, U.S. Navy Seabees, have all such extensive background in deep underground military bases, investigating cavities and so forth. I mean, even in 1964, the Army published a study of 12 deep basing sites that they wanted to build enormous caverns in. Of course, Inyo County, that holds NAWC China Lake, just north of Edwards, is one of those. And even Area 51 was built, probably the underground section is built in a huge boron mine that existed right before Area 51 was officially built. Like there's a huge boron mine in those mountains. I think it's just north, so maybe that's not where the infamous S4 is. But also S4, I also believe is a real site, even it completely independent from Bob Lazar. By Papoose Lake. Of course, hopefully in the near future regarding Bob's story, we have some new documentary coming out on that should be very exciting.
Yeah, Luigi Venditelli's documentary, S4, the Bob Lazar story. Everybody, I think this is the most anticipated movie in the UFO sphere. You have Age of Disclosure that's coming out, which I've seen. But in terms of hype, outside of the UFO world, I think S4, the Bob Lazar story is just like going to be one of the biggest.
Well, because we talked
splashes.
about the sports model as well, and I showed you the photo that a close friend of mine who worked alongside such programs, high up in DoD and IC, you exchange challenge coins to celebrate working together on something. I have quite a collection of really cool coins. One of them, it's not like an official agency coin; it's something made by a pretty high up person, a personal coin, but it has the
sports model
on it.
And what else does it say on it?
It says, what did it say? Like alien exotic technology.
Exploitation.
Exploitation. Exploitation is always the word used. And that's why I've started to kind of use that term, material exploitation.
Can't pull that up, can you?
No.
Okay.
But I did show you that.
I did see it. I mean, it's exactly what we're describing. It's the sports model with some writing.
With the small little squares on top. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the sports model, black background.
And with the little square windows. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Billy Myers craft, if you will.
I know. So, yeah. Gosh, I just can't wait to see that video. I know you and I have talked about it so much. I've talked about how Bob Lazar, I tend to stay away from his story because I'm so biased towards Bob.
Yeah.
I can't really report on it or do investigations unbiased because I want to favor Bob so much because I was so invested in his story as a young man.
Same.
But at least from what you and Jesse have told me from the work of Luigi, there should be a lot more interesting data coming out.
There definitely is.
Not definitely the same story.
No, they're definitely no. It's more in depth, and it's just there's a lot of parts to that story that people have misconstrued, and there's a lot of parts that have just been sort of left out because to get into the full Bob Lazar story, you can't just. I mean, it's so many layers.
Yeah.
As you know, looking into this type of stuff, it is layered and complicated and messy. And so to really put that on a timeline for people to ingest in a way that's just sort of friendly for everyone is a task.
Yeah.
It's a major, major task. And then adding on to that all the CGI that they've been doing to help tell that story and to really put you in S4 and in one of those hangars. I mean, it's an incredible amount of work. And so obviously there's been delays with that movie, but I don't care. I think it's one of those things that no matter when it comes out, even if it comes out 10 years from now, it'll be groundbreaking.
Have you talked to any other witnesses that have been to S4?
Not personally, no. I've just heard things like I've heard Oscar Wolf's account, through Danny Sheehan, of him, being taken to S4 underground, seeing floating craft there, and then obviously you hear about Dan Burish, Crane, in his sort of thing that went on down there too, and so it's a muddy area, but I've never been higher conviction on any story. Bob, for me, is telling the truth. I've spoken to him, as you know, and I might know some information that people will eventually find out as well through the documentary, and maybe more information that won't be in the documentary. Who knows?
Didn't Dan Burish say he never, he encountered the name Bob Lazar whilst he was at S4?
No, he says that he might have he heard the name Lazar. Never, and he said specifically not Laser. Yeah. He's like, it was Lazar. He heard Lazar. He never heard Bob. And Dan also said that he may have seen him barefoot at one point. Bob is adamant that he's never met Dan Burish, and so he's like, I don't know why I would be barefoot. Bob's like, that makes no sense to me. So, but even Dan caveats that by saying it might not have been him, but it might have looked like him. So,
because I know it's the Burish story, it's Brian Jackson, who's done great work on the case, and I know it's the Night Shift channel that loves the story. So it's cool to see people starting to really kind of give that story the same attention as some of the other infamous testimonies as Bob. Yeah. Of course, with Dan Burish, his claims of the J-Rod are not isolated. There's a former proposed Lockheed employee called Bill Uhouse, who not only said that the J-Rod was taken from the Kingman crash, but also the Kingman craft or its platform was used as a flight sim for ARBs.
That's interesting.
And of course, we now know that the Kingman crash was what was supposed to be handed over during the Lockheed Martin 2009 to 2012 divestment to, various agencies. But by all intents and purposes, the CIA Directorate of Science and Technology and involvement of Glenn Gaffney put the kibosh on that, which would make sense because the CIA DS&T, Directorate of Science and Technology, has their grubby paws on everything. Even with Neuro, like we talked about, when Neuro was created, as soon as Neuro was created, so in 1969, NER was formed. The NRO was to coordinate intelligence between the CIA and Air Force, and NERO was to coordinate intelligence between the Navy and Air Force. As soon as NERO was created, the CIA DS&T said, nope, this is ours. And it wasn't until 1972 that Secretary of the Navy John Warner finally got some control. This was long after the possible retrieval of that lenticular craft that Great Lakes Naval Station guy gave testimony to in 1972. So the CIA DS&T, they also created the Office of Global Access, the OGA, that got brilliant guys like Chris Sharp have said, hey, this is the organization alongside JSOC, or largely SOCOM, gets crash retrievals from all around the world.
Yeah, that's interesting. And also, going back to the Kingman crash, I do also believe that Dan Burish said that was intended initially to be a donation.
Really?
Yeah. I think in one of his interviews, he said that J-Rod had communicated to him that there was an agreement prior to Kingman where it would have come down and they were going to hand over like biologics, like J-Rod would have been handed over as a one-way trade. But then something happened and the craft, instead of landing, crash landed.
Right. Because that's there's a kind of long lost research, Harry Drew, 7 Days in May, which is a huge Kingman documentary and film that's just kind of been lost to time, that talks about multiple crashes, possible radar interference. We hear that with Roswell, Kingman, and Aztec. Yeah. That some sort of high-powered microwave radar somehow interfered with craft propulsion.
Yeah, either inadvertently or directly on purpose.
Maybe it directly did on purpose, because I know we talked about this, but something I put a lot of credence in is that the Ronald Reagan's 1983 Strategic Defense Initiative to defend the U.S. from Soviet ICBMs also had backdoor programs, maybe X-ray, maybe microwave lasers, to shoot down UFOs with their particle beam weapons, which sounds like something from Star Wars, but that was actually employed.
Then that was the name, that was the unofficial name of the program, was the Star Wars Initiative. And if you look at Bob Lazar, one of the 3 programs that he was read into was Sidekick. And Sidekick was the use of, I believe, using gravity as a lens to somehow focus neutrino beams or whatever it was, as a directed energy weapon.